Hey there, welcome to School of Emo, the podcast where we dive into the world of emo, pop punk, and everything in between. If you've ever found yourself in your car screaming the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday, wearing way too much eyeliner in the early 2000s, adding a buckle or a chain to every outfit you've put on, you are in the right place. I'm Erin Judge, and each week I will be your fellow student, guiding you through the music, the culture, and the history that shaped an entire generation of angsty teens. I am not the teacher of this school. I am a fellow student, here to learn alongside you and from you. Together, we will cover a lot of information that doesn't really matter, but will remind us of the days of stalking MySpace channels and getting lost in chat rooms. So connect your dial up, turn on your webcam, and let's go to School of Emo. Welcome back to School of Emo. Today's episode is going to be a little shorter than most because we're going to go through a band that I don't love as much. I don't hate them or anything, and they tend to be pretty polarizing as it is. They're just not really my thing. And honestly, I'm filming this right before Thanksgiving. You're watching this right after. I'm really just not into it that much. And I do apologize if this is one of your favorites. But we're going to learn together. And hopefully by the end of this episode, through my research, I will say I came along. I at least got curious and more interested. And so maybe by the end of this episode, we will both be more interested in diving into this band a bit more. Will they be a top one on the Emo's Not Dead cruise that I go for? I don't know. I don't see that happening, but you never know. You never know. That's one thing I love about music, that I love about this world, the genre, festivals. You never know what you're going to end up with and what you're going to experience and how that will change how you think about a band or music. So, all that aside, that disclaimer there, let's talk about mom jeans. And no, not the ones you wear, the band. And we're actually going to go to Berkeley, California, the Bay Area, which is where some other kind of post-punk, the post-punk scene really started and grew. And we're going to early 2014. And this is probably why this band doesn't really click as much for me. I am very much like third wave, early 2000s. That's what I like. I think a lot of us, what we grew up on, what we gravitated towards when we joined the scene or whatever we want to call all of this, that's what we tend to stick with. There's very few bands that started later in like the 2010s that I really connect with. And you may feel the same way. You may not. Please let me know through the comments of the YouTube version of this so we can talk about it. But this is where we get the start of Mom Jeans. The band was founded by Eric Butler, who was on vocals and guitar, as well as Austin Carango on drums. And they were students at UC Berkeley, came together, and then they recorded what they called the Spring Demo, which was a 6-track EP. And compared to what they were going to do later on, it was very minimal. So it's just Eric and Austin, acoustic, very different than what we know of Mom Jeans today, but it was at least their starting point. After that, they expanded and brought new members in. So they brought in Josh Perline, who joined on bass and vocals, and then David McDowell, who came in on drums to help kind of electrify their sound a bit more. McDowell did leave not long after, so he was only a temporary little addition. And in that same year, they recorded the Allergic EP, which really started kind of shifting their sound and like gave them a little bit more of that true foundation to what the band would continue to become. Austin moved fully to drums for this. Josh switched to guitar. Bass duties were shared in the recording between all like them both. And then Gabe Paganin, I say his last name. He joined as the live bassist, and then Josh departed amicably. All good vibes. So this foundation, this kind of EP experimentation, the forming of the band led to their first actual full-length album, Best Buds, in 2016. So July 3rd, 2016, they self-released the debut full-length album, Best Buds. Originally, they released it on cassette via Fourth Row Records, which is so interesting because this is 2016. This was not like we had smartphones at this time, right? We were dealing with iTunes Music, Spotify. Like we had all the streaming in place. This wasn't the 90s or even the 80s. So kind of an interesting approach, sort of a bit of like a vintage throwback, which some people really enjoy about them. They showcase kind of that DIY ethos, DIY spirit that was very strongly part of the emo pop punk, post punk era. And it just showed that there was a college band that was kind of respecting the roots and doing it their way to try to break through, which again had sort of that punk feel to it. Shortly after that first album, they caught the attention of Counterintuitive Records, which was an indie label that connected more of the modern emo and pop punk spaces. And they released Best Buds on vinyl later that year with that label. So this album is a little sweet. It's kind of awkward. It's very real. So there's a lot of classic emo behind it. It also delivered kind of a sincerity that resonated with fans that were tired of more of this kind of alt rock shift that a lot of these bands that were in that era that I love, that second early third wave, that were trying to keep up with the changing tides of music as a whole and the kind of fall of emo for a bit. And so they showcased kind of a fresh, like, again, throwback to what people loved and caught the eye of many fans in a time where emo was definitely kind of still not the hottest thing, unless it was very kind of pop or theatrical or had a specific fan base, like the Pierce the Veils or bands like that. So as after Best Buds, Mom Jeans kept building from there. In 2017, they put out a split EP with Graduating Life, a band whose member Bart Thompson would soon join Mom Jeans full-time as the guitarist and vocalist. So they kind of did a little collab and then took the band member. And then in 2017, they also released a fun tongue-in-cheek split EP titled Now That's What I Call Music, Volume 420, featuring Mom Jeans alongside pictures of Vernon and Prince Daddy and the Hyena. So another little collaboration. If you guys aren't familiar, if you're not familiar with Now That's What I Call Music, you were extremely young and I feel old. But it was a record that was produced or CD every single year. And it was when we like kind of pre-streaming, right? So when we were still buying CDs, we were still having to watch MTV to get the latest like new music releases. And so it was a way to kind of compile the best songs of the year into one CD that you would purchase. And then you would have kind of a mixtape of the best songs that year, the most popular songs that year. A lot of emo, pop punk, songs were on these CDs, as well as like R&B and hip hop, pop, a large range of music. And so this is kind of a play and spin on that. One thing about Mom Jeans is that they do love a good parody. They love a good joke. They have that kind of college dude vibe in that way, I guess, which is not my type of humor or something I really gravitate towards, but I respect it. I respect the effort. And it is interesting to see that throwback. It's just, I guess they kind of grew up, they were like children when this was a thing. So it's just a little funny to see. So then they briefly announced a deal also in the 2017 time with Side One Dummy Records, which was kind of a major step forward for them. But they eventually decided to stick with Counterintuitive for their next album, which was Puppy Love in 2018. So this was the second full-length album produced through Counterintuitive or released through Counterintuitive. And they did a small kind of limited vinyl run through a UK-based company, Big Scary Monster. So a little expansion with their release. This leaned more into this, what they would call, or everyone else would call, slacker emo or poppy emo, balancing this kind of humor, sarcasm with heartfelt lyrics. And according to coverage from The Reflector at the time, Puppy Love showed the band growing into their own sound while still owning that emotional DIY energy. So the punk side of them was, I think, just doing it in their own way and infusing the humor and kind of the immaturity, if you will, I guess, into it all. The college boy vibe, which is what I call it. This is where they also started to tour more broadly and had a dedicated scene and community around them because they did have a very specific approach to the music. And again, they were rising when a lot of emo was kind of taking a back seat. They really connected to a group of fans and a pretty strong community. It's one thing that fans have really loved about them. And if you are a fan of them listening to this, like my initial start and disclaimer to this episode probably made you really angry because you feel such a connection to the community of fans within the mom jeans world. So what happened after? In 2022, we got Sweet Tooth, which is kind of their reinvention album. And they released the single in 2021 leading up to it called What's Up, which teased this new direction. And then that led to Sweet Tooth, the full length album in February of 2022. So, frontman Eric Butler said that they were leaning more into the hook heavy, radio friendly pop punk and alt rock sound of the late 90s and early 2000s bands, really leaning into the influences of Blink 182, Green Day, even Weezer, which you can kind of see those influences on some of their songs, both lyrically and in the music itself. They also recorded with producer Brett Romans during this time, who is known for their work with the Front Bottoms, I Am the Avalanche, and others kind of in that space. So, really trying to push that forward and kind of shooting big, if you will. Then critics noted, though, that Sweet Tooth still carried that emotional honesty that mom jeans were known for, but with a more polish and structure behind it. Fans are a little divided. Some people love puppy love, and then that's the end. Some fans liked the evolution and reinvention into the 2020s. Let me know what you think on that. But they did continue to move forward with that reinvention and playing around with different styles in 2023 with Bear Market. So this came out only like within the same month that they announced it was coming. So in November, like early November, they said that they were going to released by the end of November. So very quick for fans. And it's not a totally new album. It's a re-recorded album from songs of past releases and reimagine with more of that poppier, more produced sound that they were going for in their album before this. So that's how they were able to get it out so quickly, but kind of like this is our new sound. This is what we want to be about. Let's re-record and kind of reproduce the old stuff to be what we are now, which reflected on their journey, honoring those early roots while also reinterpreting through their more mature lens. Mature being in quotations because the lyrics are not mature, but the sound itself, like kind of a bit of a more professional sound behind it. While Mom Jeans is still fairly new to the scene, they're a newer band overall. They're about almost 10 years in. They have still come with some controversy and criticism. I was one of them. Obviously, I've kind of hinted to it a little bit. But the biggest criticism is whether or not they're actually emo enough or fit into the scene. Truly, anything past, for some people, past the second wave of emo is never emo enough. Past 2006 is not emo. Everyone has their own opinions, but there being a little bit more humor behind the music has really divided fans to decide whether or not they would consider them to be emo and in the emo space, or if they're just kind of a parody or a joke around emo. Some think that they're too poppy, that they are a little bit more polished than they should be. Some people have criticized their music being too full of cliches. One Reddit thread I found had some of those criticisms and like thoughtful criticisms of like why they might get such pushback from the scene. One user wrote, I like mom jeans, though I haven't listened to anything newer than Puppy Love, but can see why people hate them. It seems like they take all of the emo cliches and tropes, the whiny voice, twinkly guitars, self-referential lyrics, songs about weed and being lazy, humorous and long song titles, and they crank them up to 11. I think that many people are turned off by the onslaught of cliches and see it as insincere and pandering, kind of like the emo version of modern radio country music. I think that's a good comparison. Kind of saw a lot of music go in that direction around that time. Some fans said that they seem like they're not trying. That was a big piece of like they're just kind of joking around and not really putting in effort, which seems a bit insincere and divides fans. But on the flip side, some fans defend them fiercely. Many point out that they have a lot of sincerity in their lyrics. They have a lot of self-aware humor, some lightness to that. And then the way that they document growth, both emotionally and musically, is something that's inspiring and something that people really connect with. Fans also really love the energy that they put into the shows and the communities that have been built on their shows and tours, citing that as the effort that they do put in and just the kind of surprise of it, of like, yeah, their songs are fun and they enjoy them, but seeing them live was kind of a game changer for a lot of people. And with all of this debate, it really does go back to what is emo, what's not. And we talked about that with pop punk. I think, they may fit more into pop punk. I think Blink 182 is one of those bands too that's kind of confusing. We consider them to be very true pop punk. Green Day is very true pop punk. I find Mom Jeans to be in that world. But while I love Green Day and I love Blink 182, I don't necessarily connect, likely because of generations of time, right? When I grew up, who I grew up with, when I encountered the music versus like teens who encountered Mom Jeans as teens, probably feel a little bit differently about it because that's the kind of connection, that kind of humor that sort of masks some of that vulnerability. Like that's how that comes across and how a lot of times it's accepted and connected to. So it's probably a lot of where that fits in. But if we do want to label them as emo, put them under the emo umbrella, they definitely were part of that kind of emo revival, probably what we would consider to be the fourth wave, this kind of weird space that we are still sort of in, blending Midwest emo, pop punk, and indie rock in a way that's youthful, but has still some maturity to it and evolution, showcasing, growing up and maturity. They've inspired a lot of younger fans to explore the emo genre, not just for the heartbreak, but also self reflection, personal growth, and even humor, infusing a different approach and perspective within this space, which is still really valuable and important if we're thinking about being inclusive to a broader group of people and also inclusive to the different ways that we can express ourselves. Whether that fits into emo in your mind or not, I think that is still obviously up for debate. So I did mention it's going to be short. It is short. I don't know if Mom Jeans is the band for me, but if you love the Blink 182s of the world and you're itching for some humor, maybe you relate to that humor a lot more and you're able to find the vulnerability inside of that humor, they might be a band that you really love. And I'm curious, I'm sure I will see some part of their set or see them in some way on the cruise. It's very easy not to see any band as soon as we get the schedule the next month or so. I'll definitely let you guys know what that is like, and then we'll review that after. I will not be prioritizing them compared to some of the other bands that are there, but if I do catch some of their set, I'll definitely let you know. And if you are a diehard Mom Jeans fan and you think I would be missing out if I missed their set, please let me know. Come over to YouTube. That's one of the best places. I'll leave a comment and let's talk about it. Let's connect over this and discuss it. And if you are dying to come on the podcast, maybe for them or another band that you think we have to discuss and that you have experiences with, and you could talk about for hours and you know the lore of whatever it is, I would love to have you on the podcast. It's way more fun talking to other people. So go to the show notes. You'll find my email address. Just email me and we will set you up. So our homework this week, and it's homework for myself as well, go listen to Puppy Love, the album that is probably the peak for some fans. And then listen to the latest release from Mom Jeans. Compare the two, kind of that re-released, re-recorded album, and see what you think. Share your thoughts with us. And then I will see you in our next class as we go on to our next band.